The second trend I'm going to talk about is the power of spirituality and how it is shifting from a more personal expression to a more organizational expression. So, as conscious capitalism sets a higher standard for business behavior, and God knows we need higher standards for business behavior after the accounting scandals and all of the rest, millions of people are looking for more meaning in their lives. In 1994, Gallo asked Americans, would you like to have more spiritual growth in your life? 20% of them said, yeah, I'm for that. I'll take that. 1994. In 1999, Gallup asked the exact same question, and this time, 78% of Americans said, I want more spiritual growth in my life. 5 years, 20% to 78%. But 1999, wasn't that about 50 years ago? 1999, that was before the accounting scandals, before September 11th, and all the rest. And in difficult times, in the difficult times that we've been through since then, people tend to want to look more inside because we can't necessarily rely on our external world as much as we used to. Our stock options aren't growing crazily. We're worried about terrorism. We're worried about war. We're worried about a lot of terrible things. And so we're forced to look inside somewhat, to clarify our values, to say, well, what do I really believe in? What do I really care about? And so many people, if you listen to people in the past 5 years, one of the major things you hear is, I want to spend more time with my family. And that is a value I want to live by. So today, more recently, 10 million Americans meditate. That's twice as many as a decade ago. 16.5 million people do yoga. That has taken off like crazy. That's up 42% since 2002. 95% of Americans believe in God. And so spirituality is a huge trend, a huge megatrend, the quest for spirituality, I should say. But what happens to all of that spirituality when people work for a living? What happens to it all? When you start a spiritual journey, a lot of times, it grows inside of you. The energy of spirituality grows inside of you. And it could be a traditional spiritual journey of perhaps a devout Christian. It could be a spiritual journey of someone who's non-denominational. But whatever it is, the desire for more meaning in your life, the desire for more spirituality kind of grows and grows and grows inside of you until it reaches what you might call a tipping point. And at that point, it sort of spills out into the world as you look for a mission or a cause, or as it spills out into your organizations where you might work. And when you reach the tipping point, the wounded become healers, the warriors become statesmen, the victims become advocates, and what was once an inner journey becomes more universal, more out there in the world. And today, you will see spirituality shifting from this personal expression to a more organizational expression. Gallup, again, says that half of people that were interviewed in a recent survey spoke about their faith or their spirituality at work within the past 24 hours. The past 24 hours. You'll find at Ford, the important automobile manufacturer, that the company sponsors an employee interfaith network. And people from all different religions, I believe that 6 or 7 of them are represented in that group, belong to this interfaith network at Ford. At Home Bank Mortgage in Atlanta, the CEO starts some conference calls with a prayer. at Salesforce.com, the red-hot IPO in 2004, the CEO is pictured meditating with his employees in Fortune magazine. One woman that I met that I interviewed for Megatrends 2010, The Rise of Conscious Capitalism, is Ann Mincy, and she is a senior vice president at Redken in New York City. And she believes it is her mission to bring the good news of inner beauty into the cosmetics industry, which is obsessed with externals. She considers that her mission. Many of these spiritual CEOs and executives, and I should say that I also have a chapter on leading from the middle, how you lead when you're a manager, a middle manager of some sort. But in this particular chapter, I'm talking about senior executives and CEOs. Some of them claim that their spiritual principles actually add a lot of money to the bottom line. And one of the most articulate people that I talked to was a gentleman named Greg Merton. He is now retired, but he was a very senior executive at Hewlett-Packard. He ran the $10 billion inkjet cartridge business. And Hewlett-Packard has had a lot of trouble over the years, but none of it was in the inkjet business, as we all know from our growing bills from Staples and Office Depot of having to buy these things. It seems like every week or so. It's not really that often, but it seems that way. So Greg Merton was a tough, hard-driving boss until a really horrible tragedy struck him and his family. His 16-year-old son was killed in an automobile accident, and he, of course, was devastated, especially since his son was so unlike him. He used to always say, you know, my son was a real people person. He wasn't like me. He wasn't driven. So in honor of his son, he said, I'm going to get better at relationships. I'm going to get more like what my son was like, both outside of business but also in business. And so Greg Merton set aside every month, or maybe 6 weeks, he set aside, blocked off one day, one full day. Now, if you don't have a demanding, stress-filled life, that might not sound like a lot to you. But remember, this is a senior executive. Blocking off a whole day is a lot of time for him. And in that day, he and his top team did nothing else but work on the quality of their relationships with each other, how well they communicated. Are we defensive? They asked themselves. They brought in a couple of fabulous executive coaches who coached them through this. Are we defensive? Are we open with each other? How well do we share information? And Greg Merton swears that this process of getting better at relationships was one of the most important reasons why he went through several business doublings over the course of a year. But that's not what he really brags about. Business was booming so fast that he had established 6 new sites for inkjet manufacturing. And one of these sites was in Dublin, Ireland. And this is the one he really brags about. Hewlett-Packard desperately needed this manufacturing facility. So they went over and they told the contractors who were going to build it when their deadline was. The contractors laughed in their faces, said, there is no way you're going to have this online. What's Greg Merton to do? Well, he decided to take the contractors, the Irish contractors who were building it, the County Kildare officials who were putting up all of the regulations and slowing it all down, and Hewlett-Packard's own operations people through the exact same protocols on relationship, on spiritual principles that he and his own team had come to thrive by. As a result, the Dublin site went up twice as fast as any other site in Hewlett-Packard history.